brave.
Long ago in the Scottish Highlands there was a kingdom called Dunbroch. The land was ruled by King Fergus and Queen Eleanor. They had triplet sons who were mischief makers, and a headstrong daughter called Merida. Every day, Queen Eleanor spent hour after hour teaching Merida how a princess should behave. Merida refused to listen. She preferred to have play sword fights with her father. Sometimes the queen wondered how she would ever get through to her daughter. Merida dreaded her mother's lessons. They were so boring. Her favourite thing to do was to ride her horse Angus through the forests of Dunbroch, practising with her bow and arrows. Merida was a brilliant archer and hardly ever missed a shot. One day, Queen Eleanor told her daughter it was time to follow family tradition and invite the sons of the Highland clan lords to compete for the princess's hand in marriage. But Merida said she wasn't ready to marry. Queen Eleanor told her a legend about an ancient prince who had refused to follow the traditions of his kingdom. He had split from his 3 brothers and their kingdom had fallen. "Lessons are lessons," said the queen. Merida didn't agree. Unfortunately for Merida, the clans were already on their way. A few days later, the royal family welcomed them into the castle's great hall. The 3 lords stepped forward to greet the Dunbroch clan. Young Mackintosh was the first to be introduced. "With his own sword, he defeated 1,000 fools," his father, Lord Mackintosh, bragged. Next was young MacGuffin. "With his bare hands, he defeated 2,000 fours," his father, Lord MacGuffin, boasted. Wee Dingwall was last. "He defeated 10,000 fours single-handedly," his father, Lord Dingwall, bluffed. Before the Highland Games could start, Queen Eleanor had to remind everyone of the rules. Only the firstborn child of each of the clan leaders could compete for the hand of the princess. The princess herself would choose the challenge. Merida's eyes lit up. "Firstborn," she thought. Suddenly she had an idea. "I choose archery," she cried. The competition took place on the castle grounds that every afternoon. Young MacGuffin almost missed his target together. Young Mackintosh's shot was better, but his attitude was not. Wee Dingwall was the worst archer of all, but somehow he managed to hit the bullseye. Then Merida appeared on the field. "I am the first child of Clan Dunbroch," she declared, "and I'll be shooting for my own hand." "I forbid it," Queen Eleanor cried. Merida ignored her mother and aimed her first arrow towards the target. 1, 2, 3 arrows took flight, and each arrow hit the bullseye on all 3 targets. Merida was thrilled, until a furious Queen Eleanor dragged her back into the castle. "You embarrassed them," the Queen shouted at Merida. "When they were alone, you embarrassed me." "I will never be like you," Merida cried angrily. She slashed the family tapestry with a sword, splitting the images of her and her mother. Merida ran out of the castle sobbing. She jumped on her horse and raced into the forest. Soon she arrived at the mysterious ring of stones. Tiny blue lights appeared and formed a trail. They seemed to be beckoning Merida to go deeper into the forest. The blue lights were will-o'-the-wisps. These playful spirits were known to leading people either to their treasure or to their doom. Merida followed the wisps to a small old cottage deep in the woods where an old woman lived. Merida believed that the old woman was a witch, so she asked for a spell that would change her mother's mind about her marriage. "Long ago, I met a prince," the witch told Merida. The prince had given the witch a ring engraved with the 2 axes in exchange for a spell that would give him the strength of 10 men. The witch set to work casting the spell. When she had finished, she pulled a cake from her cauldron and gave it to Merida. Since she had done as Merida had asked, the witch asked her to leave. The witch just wanted to be left in peace, so Merida headed home with the spell cake. At the castle, Eleanor was happy and relieved to see Merida. The lords were still expecting an answer. Which son would the princess choose to marry? Merida handed her mother the cake. "I made it," she said excitedly, "for you." After one bite of cake, the queen put her fork down. She suggested that they go and settle things with the lords. Soon the queen began to feel ill. Was the spell taking effect? Dodging King Fergus and the lords, Merida led her mother up to her room. Queen Eleanor went straight to bed. After a few minutes, a giant bear rose from the sheets. The queen had been transformed into a bear. That scaffy witch gave me a gammy spell, Merida cried. Eleanor Bear let out an angry roar. Downstairs, King Fergus heard the bear roar. Long ago, the king had lost one of his legs to an evil bear called Mordu. Ever since, the king had hunted down every bear he'd come across. Now there was a bear in his castle. King Fergus quickly gathered all the clans for a hunt. Merida knew she had to find the witch so that she could undo the spell. She asked her brothers to distract the king so that she and her mother could slip out of the castle. The triplets used a chicken to cast the shadow of a bear onto the wall. When the king saw it, he took off after the bear, leading the hunting party in the wrong direction. Merida and her mother quickly headed for the woods. Merida led her mother to the witch's cottage. The witch was gone, but she had left a message in her cauldron which said, "Fate be changed, look inside, mend the bond torn by pride." Suddenly a white cloud filled the air. When it cleared, the cottage was gone. The desperate pair could find nothing to undo the spell. Merida and her mother spent the night in the forest. In the morning, Eleanor picked some berries for breakfast and sat down to her queenly meal. Merida decided to get them a real breakfast. In a nearby stream, Merida showed Eleanor how to catch fish, and together they played and splashed in the river. For the first time in a long while, mother and daughter enjoyed each other's company. By late afternoon, Merida and Eleanor had spotted a trail of will-o'-the-wisps. They followed the trail through the fog to the ruins of an ancient castle. Merida noticed a symbol of crossed axes carved into the stone. As they looked around the ruins, Merida tumbled into the castle's throne room. There she saw a stone carving of 4 brothers. All of them were princes, but the 4th brother was broken off. It was just like her mother's legend. "Split," Merida whispered, "like the tapestry." Merida noticed deep claw marks throughout the room. "The strength of 10 men," Merida said, remembering the witch's words. "And the prince's ring with the crossed axes, the prince became Mordu." Just then, Mordu appeared. Mordu lunged at Merida, but the queen pulled the princess out of his way just in time. Merida and her mother raced away from the ruined castle. Back at the Ring of Stones, Merida suddenly remembered the queen's message, "Mend the bond torn by pride." She realised that to break the spell, she had to return to the castle and mend the family tapestry that she had torn. Mother and daughter headed home as fast as they could. Merida sneaked her mother into the Great Hall. The clans were brawling over Merida. Eleanor Bear hid in the shadows posing as a stuffed bear and coached her daughter through her speech. Merida announced, "The Queen feels in her heart that we should be free to follow our own hearts and find love in our own time." Moved by Merida's words, the young lords decided that they wanted to be able to choose their own fates too. "That settles it," said Lord MacGuffin. The lords agreed that Merida and the young men should be free to marry for love. As soon as they could, Merida and her mother raced upstairs to get the tapestry. Just after they entered the room, Fergus burst in and saw the bear. "Dad, no!" Merida cried. "It's not what you think!" The king swung his sword. Eleanor Bear ran out of the door and down the hallway. The clans chased her as she tried to escape from the castle. Merida tried to explain to her father what had happened, but Fergus didn't believe her. He locked Merida in the tapestry room to keep her safe. Then he raced off to hunt the bear. Meanwhile, the triplets had eaten the spell cake and become bears. Now Merida had to fix the tapestry to save her mother and her brothers. After the triplets freed their sister from the tapestry room, they all climbed onto Angus and raced after their mother. All the while, Merida mended the tapestry. Merida found the hunters at the Ring of Stones. The men had captured Eleanor. "I won't let you kill my mother!" Merida cried. She swung her sword at King Fergus's wooden leg, chopping it clean off. Suddenly, Mordu burst into the Ring of Stones. The clans rushed to attack him, but they were no match for the bear. Mordu quickly closed in on Merida. Determined to protect her daughter, Eleanor gathered her strength and broke free. Then she charged at Mordu. The two bears clashed. After a fierce battle, Eleanor pushed Merida against a standing stone. The great rock broke apart, crushing Mordu. The battle won. Merida wrapped the mended tapestry around Eleanor Bear, but nothing happened. "I don't care what you are," she cried. "You're still my mum and I love you." Merida buried her face in Eleanor's fur and wept as dawn began to break. As she wept, Merida felt a hand stroke her hair. She looked up. Her mother, back to her old self, was smiling down at her. The bond between them had been repaired. The spell was broken. Soon, Merida and Queen Eleanor were spending more time together and enjoying each other's company. The Queen knew that Merida would marry someday, but not until she was ready. And Merida knew that she didn't want to change anything about her mother. She loved her mum just the way she was.